in 3, 2, 1. Tim, sorry. The sound's not going through. I'm not sure why. Oh, because you're muted. Well, now you are unmuted. Sorry about that. Ignore the man behind the camera. Tim, do your intro again.
Hello there, folks. Welcome back. You are watching Questing for Glory, Hope and Healing 2, benefiting Nami. We have something special for you just now. My name is TinyTim78. I'm going to be your host for the next little bit. The TASBot block, including TASBot Plays Final Fantasy. We have a 4 fighters task coming up. You can see they're just getting ready there. But before we do that, we do have a fantastic donation for you. We have received $250 from Exodian, who says, let's make the Final Fantasy X TAS showcase happen. And that ties into our next incentive here, which is indeed our next run. So we don't have a lot of time. We only have the duration of this run to get this met. We have the Final Fantasy X TAS bonus run at $2,253.58 out of the $2,500 needed. So please get your donations in for that. Without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Dwango AC and the TASBot crew. And please, Dwango, take it away.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I am Dwango AC, keeper of TASBot. I have with me the Axeman and Coder Wilson. You'll be hearing more from Coder Wilson throughout the run, but mostly later. I am not going to be doing a whole lot of commentary during the run, but I'm going to talk a whole lot right now because a lot of crazy things are about to happen. So, we're currently watching Final Fantasy, but wait, we have to clear out the console RAM, and we have to start from a completely clean cartridge. So, here is a completely clean copy of Final Fantasy. It is as if it was minty fresh out of the box. But we have to clear the console memory as well, so it's in a decidedly deterministic state. We need it to be in just the right pattern. So here we go. This is scary, because I'm going to be swapping cartridges while the console is on. So first, clear the console memory. These weird blue lines are normal. Pulling the cartridge out while the console is still on, don't recommend. Putting the new cartridge in while the console is still on. Starting TASBot and pressing reset. And here goes. Start. Okay. Now, don't cause any static electricity.
Oh, that's right.
Static. No static. Andre, we're gonna. I don't remember which input it's on. Looks like it's 4. All right. We're gonna put 2, 2, 6. Let me see if I can't get that camera a little bit better. Oh my gosh, it is so totally not in focus.
Whoa.
Yeah, you were not
yeah,
wrong.
sharpen us up here.
Wow, yeah, that was
Thank you, chat.
Totally not in focus. All right,
Okay.
now we're back to where we can see it.
Wow, we
And-
look good.
Yeah,
Oh my
carefully coming back so I don't
Like, did you
cause
get a haircut?
any static. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Dwango AC, keeper of TASBot, and I'm a professional. So welcome to the new studio. We just set this up not long ago. This is where we'll be doing task giving later on, but I don't want to throw my own thing on. What you just saw happening on the console was kind of complicated, so I want to explain it really quickly. Right now we're in the beginning stages. I'll let the Axeman describe what we just did, but basically we had to completely wipe out the console's memory, and we had to wipe out the game to get it to start at a known good state. If we make it to here unimpeded, we know we're okay, and we made it.
That's right.
So, my part is largely done. I'm going to pass commentary over to the Axeman.
First, I want to thank everyone who donated for the names. I think it was just someone who really wants me to finish my highlight task here. But thank you again. These names, so as you first noticed, when TASBot was able to put in the names, that's because we have a script that's able to edit the tasks. We did this beforehand, but not by much beforehand. And the tasks, it sort of just compiled the tasks together with everything that I pre-recorded, along with the names, and it generated the input to enter those names. And that's how we get the tasks to enter these names and still play through the tasks. The other thing is that, yeah, we did have a lot of console, there's a lot of hardware shenanigans and miracles that make this happen. So big thanks to everyone, Dwango and multiple people in the community that all came together to get this working.
Definitely Vigratech, Cordimoto, TheAxeman, I'm sorry, TheAxeman, you're right here, the Moss3212. There were a lot of people that specifically contributed. By the way, this is being run on a TASTM32 board made by Onosaurus with scripting help from a number of people. Big Bass has helped a little bit with that. The Moss3212 again. It's just a huge number of people that make this kind of stuff possible. So.
That's right. Yeah, you can think of me as like the software guy. Like I just made the task on an emulator, and actually, so this task is actually part of a project that I sort of, at first I didn't know that we'd be able to completely clear out the SRAM, so the save game data. The RNG for this game, that's used in the battles, is saved in the save game data. So you have to delete that in order to kind of get a known starting state.
As if you just purchased the game and you had it fresh out of the box.
That's right, yeah.
And in fact, I was able to get this particular game new in box.
Nice.
So part of that meant that I was able to extract the contents of the game, and in fact, it's empty SRAM, and now we're flashing that original state back onto it every time we start a run.
Cool. So yeah, we've got that that original SRAM. We clear out that RAM. That clears out the save game state, but this run was kind of made without assuming that. So the idea was we would get into the first battle, hold down the A button, and you'll win the fight every time. But you'll take a lot of damage, and one of your guys may die if you're just holding down the button versus those imps that you run into first in the first battle. You know that you'll run into imps. That's based on the console RAM, but based on the SRAM, which is sort of the RNG that controls like how much damage happens in battles, different things can happen. So the idea was if you did that and then you kind of looked at some numbers that popped up, so like your first damage, you could actually figure out where the battle RNG was, put it in, and kind of like readjust the run on the fly, and you could actually make it sync without knowing what SRAM you started at. But then after you finish the first fight, your HP is going to be sort of like all messed up. You won't know what state you're in. So in order to kind of even that out, what we did is I went to the inn in Provoca before we fought the pirates, and that just sort of evens everything out.
It does make the run slightly longer, but if we had gone that route where we were still dealing with that totally unknown state, it would have allowed us to pull that off. And we decided to run the run as it was. It makes very little time difference with it.
That's right, yeah. I would have had to like resync the beginning or possibly the rest of the run too, since I sort of made it all work out. When I actually made the White Mages run for RPG Limit Break 2019, what actually happened was I think I restarted knowing that we were able to do this, and so there's kind of no shenanigans like that for that. But we're going. You might have noticed, so if you've played this game, you know that you kind of get through. You can get through Garland pretty easily. Even the pirates, like there's 9 of them, but they're so weak. You can just go in there, you can stomp them. But this cave, if you were to come in here with no equipment, no weapons, no levels, because remember, we didn't buy any weapons. We went straight from the beginning. We went straight to the first boss, and we beat them with just our bare hands. And then we did the same thing with the pirates.
Which is still better strats than I've ever done.
Now you're saying this, but 2 of our party members are dead. Why are we dragging 2 bodies with us?
Well, the thing is, they're more used to us. Well, they're no use to us alive, and when they're dead, they're less. They hold us back less. That's because every time we get into one of these battles that we've got to run from, we don't have to tell them to run.
So let me get this straight. It takes less effort to haul their corpses around with us.
That's right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
This game is totally normal. There's nothing dark here happening at all.
Shout-outs to the Oregon Trail where you actually get a cart to put your dead party members on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, in Dragon Quest, you actually get to see either, well, depending on what version you're playing, it might be a coffin or a ghost following you. But in Final Fantasy, at least in this version, actually most of the Final Fantasy games, you only get to see your main character. I mean, we'll see that later. In Final Fantasy X, you still only see your main character running around in the map.
Yep.
But, so here we're taking on this boss, and we're coming in with, well, we did pick up a weapon. We picked up a short sword. But we're only on level 3, so this is a pretty clutch fight. But, I mean, come on. If you were watching at RPG Limit Break, you saw that I did this with 2 white mages. So these fighters, by comparison, the fighters are going to do it pretty easily.
I mean, at least it's less drudgery.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I asked earlier because I think it'd be interesting for the viewers. But why is it that occasionally we will, with one of our 2 living characters, which is now down to 1, we'll go ahead and input the command for the first character and then hold the command for the second? Why do we do that?
That's because every time, so while your cursor is waiting, the RNG is cycling. The RNG for this game is pretty simple. There's just this one counter that indexes into this lookup table, and it looks up a number, and that's sort of like your number. It's a 1-byte number. And that's how the RNG works. So while the cursor is sitting there, it's moving. That RNG just keeps cycling. So yeah, we're waiting the cursor. We're waiting for the right time to press the button.
Okay, so it's a time-based thing where it's just waiting for a sequence of numbers to hit a certain number, and then it goes forward.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's an 8-bit number, so 256, and it cycles every 2 frames. And so over 512 frames, which is about 8 seconds, a little more than 8 seconds, that's how long it takes to completely cycle through the entire RNG.
And start over.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That is way less complicated than Final Fantasy X.
Oh, yeah?
Which we'll talk about later.
Can you let me know if we've got time for a few donations?
Actually, this is a good time. Let's go for it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got loads coming in here. Very generous. Remember, all your donations go towards benefiting NAMI. We've received $25 without a comment from Heel Turtle, $10 from without a comment from Green Speed, a $26 anonymous donation without a comment, $25 from Twilight Dusk, who says $25 towards the Final Fantasy X TAS. We can do it, everyone. And we're just under $250 away from that, so keep those donations coming in, folks. We must see that fantastic TAS. We really must. I really can't wait to see it. And another $25 from a Heel Turtle. Again, thank you, without a comment. So thank you so much for all your generous donations. Remember, they're all going towards benefiting NAMI. Keep the donations coming in. We can get that Final Fantasy X TAS. Back over to you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Final Fantasy X TAS as well.
I actually looked it up on my console, the Steam version, and I have put in just shy of 7,000 hours into Final Fantasy X. And maybe about 50 of that is casual playthrough. So 7,000 minus 50. Maths. But it's going to be wild. We're going to compress it down to a nice showcase for you guys. It's gonna be awesome.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for those generous donations. NAMI is an important cause to me in particular, and I really appreciate all the support.
Yeah. So we just beat the Dark Elf Astos. This is actually also a pretty tough fight. Casually, he's got a spell that he always leads off with, and he almost always casts this spell called Rub that just instantly kills you. And at this point in the game, there's really no defense you have against it. You just have to kind of almost count on one of your characters dying. So pretty brutal. But we get real lucky, and he doesn't use it at all.
You get lucky, or you force him to be lucky.
Well,
Now's probably a good time to talk about how you do that.
That's right, yeah. So this is a TAS. The TASes are usually pre-recorded on an emulator. So if you were able to play on an emulator, our main site is TASBvideos.org, and we have all these emulator-based videos. You can download the emulator. You can download a file that contains the information on the button presses. So all of the input from the keyboard or your controller input comes in, and it plays it back on the emulator. And if you start out at sort of a known state, which we sort of had to simulate with this crazy hardware setup on the hardware, on the emulator it's a lot easier. You can just reset the emulator, hit the power state, and the SRAM's clear, the RAM is clear, and you've kind of got this known start state. And if that's the case, you can play through consistently if you have the same button presses. And the NES is actually a really good system for this, because it's simple enough that it pretty much it syncs pretty easily. When we say sync, that means like if something happened that wasn't what we expected on the emulator, if the console diverged from the emulator somehow, then we would like get stuck on a wall or die probably.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to go through the game on very low levels. If something happens, we die pretty fast.
The determinism is really important. So a Nintendo console doesn't have any external source of what we call entropy, any external source of a seed for the pseudo-random number generator. And the only thing they're using for seeding it is player input, because it's the only thing they could. As a result, if you can completely control player input, you can completely control the seed of that random number. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can completely control it, but you can influence it by what button presses you're doing. And I assume that's what you're doing here, where sometimes you're taking a, not necessarily circuitous route, but you're taking very unusual steps sometimes.
That's right. So a lot of these things are based on... So as far as the encounters, there's actually a very complicated encounter system that you can walk around, and we can know exactly what enemy encounters we see if we know what areas we're stepping in and what how far we're going in each area. That's pretty. Real-time runs use that too, because that's not that. It doesn't take like sort of like real precise timing to do. It's just where you're walking. As long as you're careful where you're walking, you can get right. But we analyze this fast to a very high level and figure out exactly where we need to walk. So you can save some steps by walking into the town of Elfland and going in the castle. But we don't do that because it's a little faster to walk around the town. We get to avoid this sort of like fade in, fade out, which is real slow. We get into the we avoid going into towns, getting at things when we don't have to. And part of that is because if we manipulate that encounter system properly, we'll get the right battles in the right places and avoid them in other places. The outer world actually has a fairly high encounter rate, and every time you it's comparing a threshold of some number. This is different from the battle RNG, but there's another like lookup table for the encounters. Actually, there's a bunch of lookup tables.
This game is complicated.
Yeah, so one of them's looking up like this threshold for your random encounters, and that controls how many counters you get. There's a threshold that tells you, and that's based on the area you're in. So it's like 8 for the outer world, 3 for the ship, and actually, no, it's 8 in dungeons. It's 10 in the outer world. So you get more encounters walking around the outer world than you do in most dungeons. And there's certain areas where it kind of like just jumps up and it's real high. And one of those is, of course, the bridge for Warmech. And another one is actually as you get into the Temple of Fiends, the last few floors, it sort of gradually gets cranked up a little bit. And the enemies are also getting harder, which makes that last dungeon just so brutal.
Yeah, and even here, you were just one step away. You just couldn't quite make it. Mm-hmm. And I assume that you picked this because it was the least obnoxious.
Yes. So sometimes we're trying to get into another area before we get into another fight, because that value, if we were to get into the cave, so that's the case in Marsh Cave. If we had one more step before we entered Marsh Cave, we would have had a fight in the outer world. But since we made it inside, that kind of like value that we hit there was safe. There's no encounter. In other cases, we actually want to get the encounter right before we get into another area so that we can avoid these unrunnable fights. And this is going to be a big issue later on. Not so much right now, but later on we really want to avoid these fights that have a flag that says, you can't run from this fight, you must fight. And of course that's going to be for bosses. You can't run at all. But on regular enemies, it's kind of annoying because we want to be able to run from them. We do fight some regular fights, but not a whole lot. Actually, I'm not sure if this run's gonna. I'm not gonna fight a whole lot of regular fights. I think in Earth Cave we are going to fight some enemies. If you saw the White Mages run at RPG Limit Break, the White Mages are really underpowered, and they go through a little more. They go through a little more when they need to avoid a fight that's unrunnable. But the fighter, we've got a little more attack power. So if it's not that bad, we can actually like take on some of these unrunnable fights and fight them. But we're gonna be smart about it.
So what level are we right now?
So let's see. We get what you can. There's a thing here. You can only get one level up per battle. So right now we have enough experience to get one more level than we do. When we beat Astos, we have the ability. We got enough experience to get one more level. And if we were to go into our status screen right now, it would say like -2,300,000 something like that. It's what, yeah. But so the reason is that it doesn't actually, it only processes one level up at a time. So the next time we do a fight, we'll get that level up. And I believe, so the White Mages have the same issue, but for them, they need that level up. So they actually took a random fight and just beat it just to get that level up. The fighters, we're just gonna tough it out. And we'll eventually even out, because the level ups, this game, the level ups kind of like get more and more spaced out, so that by the end, we're hardly getting enough experience. Right now, we're gonna get a level up every fight.
Side note, we literally just pulled a cabin out of a treasure chest.
That's what happens in this game, yeah.
Why do we need a cabin?
We need it to regain our health.
Ah.
So, we're going to take some damage, and you saw us go to the time, so it's faster. Instead of going to an inn, if we need to regain some health, we can take some damage later on, we just use a cabin or a heal potion or something like that, and I think we can get by with just the cabin.
Ah, but you're never going to save.
Not going to save, but we're going to use, but we're going to heal. So the cabin, using the outer world, you can save your game, and then you can actually like reset, and you can do some tricks with that. You can use it, you can save your game, you can trigger battle, and then that kind of advances the encounters table past the point where you would get the fight. So then you can just walk on and you've skipped a battle. But we can't do that because this is a no resets run. And that's just because TASBot isn't that consistent with the resets. So I just made a no resets run for TASBot because TASBot's so awesome.
I'm still hopeful we can make one consistent enough, and it might actually be possible at this point. We've been advancing our game. Onosaurus in particular made a very, very stable version of the TASTM32 device. Unfortunately, because of supply chain issues, we can't get a hold to make more of them. So if you can wait for a couple more months, we might actually have some in stock. We don't sell them at a profit or anything, but if you would like your own replay device, head on over to TAS.bot. We have a store.tas.bot site. We'll hope to populate in the future. We don't make money on it. It's just people who want to be able to play back runs on hardware they have at home.
Do we have a second for
Decidedly a cottage industry. Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Remember, you're watching Quest of Glory, Hope and Healing 2, benefiting Nami. We still have a little bit to go on the Final Fantasy X TAS Showcase. We're sitting at $2,278.58 out of the $2,500 needed. We only have until the end of this run to get that in. So please get your donations in. And if you do that, you'll also qualify for one of our fantastic prizes. We currently have a handmade shiny Eevee plush and the handmade Eevee plush. And they're like roll plushes. They're very special. They're very interesting indeed. And $5 minimum donation gets you into the draw for those. And we also have the Super Nintendo with the component video mod at $25 minimum donation as well. So please get your donations in. Not only are you benefiting NAMI, absolutely fantastic cause, but you can get some more TASBot. And who doesn't want more TASBot? And eventually a prize as well. Over to you.
Thank you. So we've been going through Earth Cave here, and we've got all these bats just kind of walking around. And if you've even played this game casually, you know how annoying these bats are. And, they are super annoying for the TAS as well. But, it's really just annoying when I make it. We don't, once we get this run syncing, the bats they're under our control. And so we're going to do everything. It's going to be some other things later on where we actually have to talk to an NPC that moves, and we will kind of get them to move towards us. So there's actually the NPC movement is extremely random, much more so than like the actual battle RNG. We can wait on that, yeah. The NPC movement, there's like counters and accumulators that are doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And it's based on, and it reads uninitialized memory in the cartridge, which is why we had to do this trick where we initialized the console RAM in the beginning. But all that is worth it when we get to just walk right by these bats. So about that Final Fantasy X run, how does that work? It's the PC version?
Yeah, so for convenience sake, we're running the PC version, but similar logic can be used on other versions as well. But we are actually not deciding what's happening beforehand on that run. The computer is going to see what's happening during the run and then respond to what's happening. So it's, some people classify it as an AI. I call it a VI, but AI for most people.
I assume is virtual intelligence?
Virtual intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. You might be thinking that's basically the same thing, and you'd be very close to right. The difference is because artificial intelligence, in computer programming, the computer will actually review what it's done and then improve. So it's a slow process. Virtual intelligence is more like simulating a real intelligence, but it's not going to improve on itself unless a programmer
makes sense. And I should note that is so wildly different than what the TAS Videos community would normally think of a tool-assisted speedrun being, that it almost stretches the definition, and yet in the beginnings of TASes, that was kind of more what we were doing. We were, in some cases, writing scripts to run games, all kinds of crazy things. So this is an ode to a very different way to make a tool-assisted speedrun, but it's still using a tool to perform and assist a human in doing a speedrun. And it's in fact assisting you so much that you don't actually touch the controller.
Nope, don't even touch the controller. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't respond. I have literally had runs going while I was in town getting shopping.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're able to actually complete the whole game with your script?
I have a few runs that have completed.
Okay.
We're still working some of the stability, some of like there's a 1 in 64 chance that a certain set of items drops, and I haven't accounted for it because the other 63 options almost always happen. But yeah, before I loaded up to come out here to TASBot Studios, I got a complete run where I was completely hands off.
Nice.
A new PB, as is said in the industry.
So,
but then there's another confusing question over who takes credit, the programmer or the program?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's going on in Final Fantasy here? What's happening?
Okay, so what happened, you get to Earth Cave, and this game slows down a little bit. We had to go into Earth Cave, and then we beat the vampire. The vampire had a chest behind it that had a ruby. And the ruby is the favorite food of the golem, who is kind of blocking the titan, I guess is what.
I got a question. How would you know that the ruby was found behind the vampire?
There's NPCs in different towns that talk about like, oh, the there's a giant inert cave. The other thing is, if you just go around enough, there's nowhere else you can go.
Fair. This game was evil when I played it.
Yeah. I have had Dwango,
Ooh.
and yes. So this is one of the fights that we can't run from. So we're gonna fight him. And we have the Coral Sword, and the wizards are a water type, or and so there should be a sword weakness, but that is completely busted. However, our sword is strong enough that when we're a fighter, so as long as we get a good critical hit, it doesn't matter. We can still one-shot him.
Did I just hear you say that there's a programming error that the developer intended one thing, but a different thing actually happens?
Well, that's one of the errors in this game.
One of them.
So,
okay, there's many.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a bit. You know, if you were like me and you got like the big chart, it was the Nintendo Power, or the thing that came with the game, and it tells you like every weapon, here's all these different bonuses that come up, and you know what it'll tell you for the Coral Sword is strong against water enemies, and it's supposed to be there's these weapons that have weaknesses against certain types of monsters. And indeed, if you look at the data in the game for each monster, there's a bit that, or a byte that tells you like this is their types, or there's like I think it's like a bit mask, and there's you know, for different types, because monsters can have multiple types. And then there's a mask in the for different types in your weapon. This weapon does extra damage against these enemies, but there's nothing hooking the two together and doing extra damage.
Oh,
and so it
lost opportunity.
Yes. So yeah, I think he just had to get this game out, and the programmer Nasir just didn't get some of the stuff done.
So if you're sitting there at home and thinking, nerd, right, but this is interesting. If you know how the game were more informed, so knowing these aspects, knowing how the game works, actually helpful even to real-time runs.
Yeah,
this is pretty nerdy stuff, but it's also pretty cool.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of feedback between the TAS and the TA community, just finding tricks, because work. I mean, sometimes it's a little harder to pull others off, you know, where you've got to time things to a frame. It can be tough, but there can be tricks. So since our last presentation of this at RPG Limit Break, there that have beaten this game way faster than manipulation runs that we saw before.
Human task type, what do you mean by that? Segmented?
No, not segmented. So the way it actually works is, so this is Fred Coughlin, who's a very talented and tech guy. He has figured out that if you, so the way it works is you hold down the B button, and what happens is your guy goes up to the front to be commanded, but since you're holding down the B button, he goes to the back. And as he does this, it increments the RNG. And then when the RNG is in the right place, you switch from A to B. And this doesn't require, there's maybe like a second, a little less than a second. So you don't have to have the switch from A to B. It doesn't have to be very precise. So it's pretty easy to execute once you've got it planned out, how many times you need to hit B and then A. And,
interesting.
Yeah, and it seems you get a lot of fights, but the other thing is when you're fighting all of the fights, you get level up really fast, especially if you reduce your. He does the same thing. He reduces it down to one character, maybe two, and so when you do that, and this only applies in battle. So outside of battle, you can be kind of you can do whatever you have to. You can kind of like get all your equipment set up and everything. And so since he's got to hit B and then A, it's not like the fine level of control that we have where we can just wait and it hits. It's a much like longer way to get the right RNG. So it still takes him, I forget, I'm not sure exactly what the record is. Does anyone know? It's somewhere between like an hour and a half and 2 hours or so.
Interesting.
Yeah, which the fastest the fastest task that sort of uses all the reset tricks that we were talking about before, where you save your game and turn off the power and everything, that can beat the game in under 70 minutes.
That is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
apologies to the stream if we're getting some audio cutting in and out. I'm gonna blame the pre-stream chaos.
Oh,
Audio. What kind of audio cutting in and out?
yeah.
Apparently, it's all of us. We're all cutting in and out a little bit, but
So I should talk to you about
Yeah.
what happened before the stream. Just so you know, folks, we might look calm and comprised here, at least a little, but we're not. Right before the run, I had a thing slide off a desk, went to grab it, hit my water bottle, upended it into my keyboard, which then fried the USB controller the keyboard was attached to, which was the same one the soundboard was attached to. So I frantically moved everything around, but now everything is all on the same USB controller, so it's probably a little overloaded. This was not great, and I'm hopeful that I can recover. The keyboard is currently drying out upside down across the room, and I will the controller recovers. But I shorted it pretty bad. So this was not exactly ideal.
Do we have a moment for some donations?
All right, so it's a great time, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you were cutting out a little bit there again. Okay, so, right, Final Fantasy X. Do we like Final Fantasy X? I hope we do, because we've received $50 from Rob Draven. Did I hear Final Fantasy X task after a Final Fantasy I fighter-only task? Shut up and take my money. Thank you so much for that. Professor Nez has donated $100. Helping robots take over the world, one donation at a time. Seems good. And $50 from Ward. Yes, more TASBot, please. And $25 from Valdecorn without any comment. But with that, we have met the Final Fantasy X. That's incentive. Thank you so much indeed to all your generous donations towards Nami. We've also, I'm just seeing it on the screen there, hit $27,000 for Nami. So thank you so much indeed to everyone for all your generous donations. Please, please, please keep them coming in. Thank you very much indeed. Back over to you.
Oh, thanks again for everyone who donated. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you saw we beat the Earth Fiend, and then we went off to the other side of the world. We talked to the sages in the Circle of Sages. They gave us the canoe, and they told us, go vanquish the Fire Fiend in the volcano. But we don't want to. That would be... That route is kind of... There's no reason to do that just yet. So instead of going to the volcano, we're going to go to the Ice Cave.
it sounds like a needless side quest. Something about needless side questing.
Yeah, I mean, so the Fire Fiend in the volcano is one of the 4 fiends, and we have to beat it in order to kind of get through the game without any glitches here, it's sort of, I guess you could say this is sort of a no major glitches run, but there's definitely glitches happening. But anyway, so we went to Ice Cave because in the Ice Cave, we're going to get the floater stone, which raises up the airship, and having an airship is... Another point here, we just saw sorcerers, and you would probably do everything you could to avoid that encounter in a no manipulations run, because the sorcerers can kill you in 1 hit.
Ooh.
Yeah, they have an instant death attack, and it's not like anything, and there's no way to defend against it. It's just sort of like a hit and an instant kill. And so yeah, you don't want that to happen. So a real-time run will use encounter manipulation to avoid those fights. But so as a task author, that's fine with me. I can just run. We are going to go a little bit around here to get Flame Sword. This is going to be our I think this would be the last weapon we actually use as a weapon.
Apparently not yet. I guess we don't need it yet.
Well, we don't need to equip it just yet. So in order to equip your weapons, you got to go to your pause screen and everything. So if we kind of want to optimize that. One of the things that we do is, if you go to the pause screen and kind of do multiple things at once, that can kind of save some time. Another way is if we need to manipulate the NPCs. So going to the pause screen adds in an extra frame or something to the NPC counter, and so we can actually use going to the menu to manipulate the the NPC movement. And that can actually like save frames. You realize I actually like tweaked out every single frame because most of the ways to manipulate the NPC movement involves like either waiting a frame before you go down the stairs, or like bumping into them for 1 frame, or stepping like around them. And I like tested all these different things, like thousands of different combinations, maybe not thousands, at least hundreds of different combinations of all these things, just to save a few frames on like these NPC movements.
Dang, that was a nice hit.
Yeah, the flame sword is pretty nice.
All that XP for 1 level.
I'm not sure if we're actually caught up yet, because, you know, we're beating the bosses, and that boss is actually not a bad place to sort of like walk back and forth and beat it over and over, because it gives you a lot of experience. The problem is, though, it has a lot of like instant death attacks, and so right now you don't have any defense against it, but there's a ribbon. It counts as an armor, and it defends against instant death attacks. And so if you get that, then you're like pretty safe against it, and you can do that. So we need a lot of gold for something coming up. So we're gonna get it from these treasure chests here, because we're not fighting any enemies. So we're gonna have to get that gold somehow.
We're not selling the cabin?
No, in fact, you can't sell items in this game.
Oh, this is a Final Fantasy game, right?
It is,
Oh.
but so items and weapons and armor all go in different categories. So Coder Wilson here has confessed that the first Final Fantasy he played was what? You played 7 or?
Yeah, my first one was 10, but the oldest one I've
okay.
played so far is 7. Yeah.
Yeah. And I made him play this game casually a little bit earlier today, just so he knew what he was getting into.
And how was it? What words of encouragement do you have to someone who might want to play this for the first time?
I'm not sure. To put it in perspective, I got stuck choosing my party. I was confused on how to properly choose my party. So it was I see in the chat that someone mentioned 6. I have 6 on the phone. I'm going to play it. But yeah, if you want to play this game, don't get confused. Take it slow. Try different buttons. Different buttons do different things. It's magical. And talk to people in town, which is something I like never do in any game.
Yeah.
Because in modern games, they give you a nice quest marker or direction marker to say, go this way and story will happen.
When
not
did they
so
start
much here.
doing that?
Not so much here. It's
No.
pretty much you are in the world, have fun.
Yeah. Are you not entertained?
Yeah, and I told him, you know, for sure, don't do the Ultima 4, which I played the other night.
Oh god.
Yeah, that one is really special. We're gonna sail the ship around a little extra here because we're setting up kind of like we're setting the encounter states in a certain way to be convenient later.
Wait, we just turned around.
Yeah, that was what he mentioned.
That's right. So
Yes.
now that we have the canoe, you can actually use any sort of river outlet as a place where you can park your ship. And remember, the encounter rate is higher on land, and it's the same on rivers, but there's different fights on rivers versus on land. So we're going to take advantage of the fact that the ship moves twice as fast as our walking speed. So we can get on the ship, move around, and then go on land and get into a random fight. And we want to get this encounter state into a very particular place before we go on. The reason is because, like I mentioned, certain fights you can't run from. And we're going to get a lot of those in these endgame dungeons. And remember, we also can't reset. So one of the other tricks is that you can just reset your game at a certain point and reset that encounter if you actually like hit the power button and let the memory of the console go down to all zeros or something. You can reset to a known state there, and then you get a certain encounters, and you can avoid these unrunnable encounters. Or maybe you want to get a good encounter for grinding. That's another one of the tricks is if you save your game in Conary or any place by the ocean, you can save your game, turn it off, start again, and then if you go out on the ship, the first fight you see will be kaizokus, which are a fairly good gold maker. Another one is learning which fights have ogres in which areas near like Provoca or Elfland, because the ogres give good gold, but other enemies give really crappy gold. So there's all these things that go with like being able to manipulate luck and manipulate your encounters that require resetting your game with the tents or the cabins, and we can't do that. So we had to do some other tricks to get by. This is why I made some like advanced optimization scripts that sort of just simulate the whole game. I figure out what encounters are. I kind of make a cost function and say, if it's an encounter that I can run right away from, that's like one value. And we still want to reduce the number of encounters if we can. And then if there's an encounter that we can't run from, it's probably going to be so much that like maybe it's not worth it. But I'll put a cost function value on it, and I'll optimize that cost function for time. And there's other considerations like how many steps we're taking. So if we have to take extra steps to kind of get around something, like in the very beginning, we actually had to walk a little bit further than we had to get around Conaria, and that got us on these no encounter spaces around Conaria, and I was able to kind of juke out one encounter from before we got to Marsh Cave. So there's all these places where we're kind of doing all these calculations to reduce the number of encounters, number of steps, but sometimes we actually take extra steps, like I said, to get the encounters, move them into areas where that encounter, in that area, that encounter is runnable.
Wouldn't be a Final Fantasy game without some kind of step manipulation, am I right?
That's right. It's all about step manipulation. And there's also a 64 stairs glitch, too.
Yeah.
You've got to have those.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So you spent quite a lot of time going back and forth on the ship.
Yeah.
A rather long time ago, and you've had several other encounters you've run from since.
Yeah.
Was that all still in the progress of setting up a particular outcome?
That's right. So
we're not there yet.
Well, the outcome is that we're going to run from every fight as we go through the Sea Shrine here.
Ah, so that was the state you needed to be in?
Yes. So
Got
the Sea Shrine here has a lot of fights that are not runnable. And we put the encounter at in an area. We got it into a state where we can just go right through here, walk right through, and we won't get any encounters. Now, there's always no encounters on this floor, so this is normal. There's also all sorts of really awesome treasure here, but we're gonna pass it all up. We don't need it. There's one of some of the best armor in the game is here, and we're just gonna pass by it because we're gonna get the one item that we need. Which is the slab.
Always seemed like a useless thing to get compared to everything else.
Well, okay, in the original Japanese version, it's called the Rosetta Stone. If
that
that
makes
more sense, yeah. As part of learning more about this, I've been studying Japanese, and it's still, skoshi,
Shout outs to Japanese Restream. You guys are awesome.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah. But actually, my Japanese was good enough, and mostly, I'm not very conversational, because I learned Japanese to play games, but I got good enough that I can actually, get through this game in Japanese, which was pretty cool. I mean, so one of the things you notice if you play to the other Final Fantasy games is that, the item names and some of the enemies that recur are all different. And but if you played in Japanese, you can see, no, they weren't. They were the same in Japanese, but they changed them on translation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the heal potions used to be called, I think they were just called potions. But in Japanese, so there's soft potions that heal your stone from this game. Mm-hmm. But in Japanese, it's called a golden needle. Just like in every other Final Fantasy. So, yeah.
In that same train, there are some times when you'll see in a Final Fantasy name something that's misspelled, but still makes sense, like a high potion, H-I potion.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of, as they developed more games throughout time, the hardware and the available memory space changed and increased, and so something like a high potion is an example where it fit a certain thing. I think before 10, I think it was a previous one, where they had to fit a certain number of English characters into a certain length. Example of that, the characters in this game are limited to 4 characters in.
Yeah, very, very limiting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It
Well,
really is.
okay. So here's the deal. Once you learn Japanese, so these older games were all written in it's all hiragana. So actually, though, they have hiragana and katakana. So it's a phonetic alphabet, but it's a syllabic alphabet. So one character can be like ko, or like two or three letters sometimes that we would have.
It often like balances a, if I remember correctly, a consonant and a vowel sound as a single character.
Yes.
With a few exceptions that are almost like a single English
Yeah.
character lining up with a single Japanese, but that consonant vowel combination.
Yep. And so those, it's just less characters to print out. And so because of that, they make the name, so like 4 characters is actually long enough to reach most Japanese people's names. They can put their name in 4 hiragana's letters or characters.
Not so much for us.
Yep. Nope. So, there's all these different things that happen in translation. That's why they as they started doing more things in translation, they added more characters, more space to kind of like put these things out. So, yeah. So, yeah,
I mean, our donators have certainly done some interesting things with what little space they had.
that's right. And I know that our Japanese restreamers are also generous donators. The Japanese restreamer for my last run at Ultima 4 a couple days ago was actually the one who got the name. Fuso.
Nice.
Yeah.
We really appreciate your efforts, folks.
Yep. Arigato gozaimasu. Minasama.
Speaking of generous donations, shall we ask if there are any more?
We could, because this
I was
fight
just
is going
about
to go
to
on
ask
quite a
you.
bit.
Great minds think alike. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we have received $100 from Peppy. You can't spell Final Fantasy without ta. Well, thank you very much indeed. Really
good.
generous donation there, thank you. And another $20 from Ratburger without any comment. But thank you so much indeed. We've raised over $27,000 for NAMI. Remember, all your donations going towards NAMI. Absolutely fantastic cause. We are supporting NAMI. They are the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organisation, whose work is focused around 3 pillars, including education and support, awareness and advocacy. For advocacy, NAMI engages in federal advocacy, and supports NAMI state organisations in their state-level advocacy efforts. NAMI also operates a national helpline available Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, which provides information, referrals, resources, and a compassionate, understanding, trained volunteer to support the caller. It is such an amazing cause, very personal to myself as well, having had few issues in the past. So please, folks, all your donations go towards helping NAMI. It is really appreciated. Okay, back to you.
Shout out to Ratburger, a friend of mine. That's his online name. He
Oh, thanks.
actually has a legitimate name somewhere. But thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rat.
And thank you for talking us through this long boss fight where we don't really have any other option than fighting them over and over again. Pretty slowly, because Kraken has 800 HP, and that's actually, that fight is actually not as bad as if you saw the White Mage
White
run.
Mage was
remember?
excruciating.
Yeah. But the problem is there's really no way around it. We kind of really have to get through Kraken there. Otherwise, we could come back and get him later, but it would just be so long to get through the Sea Shrine again. It's such an out of the way place, so we kind of have to get that fight done with.
So what's our general battle tactic at this point when we're not running away? Are we like using any potions or spells?
Nope, we fight and we fight.
we are 4 fighters.
That's right. I mean, our class is fighter, so that's what we're gonna do.
All right.
Fight. That's the thing about these earlier Final Fantasies. There wasn't a whole lot you could do. You could fight and you could cast magic. And as you saw, you don't have any. The magic users don't get very many casts of their spells.
So get a really big sword and hit it very hard.
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But that's why the White Mage challenge is so fun. as we saw at RPG Limit Break there, because the white mages get white magic, and the white magic is pretty cool if you're fighting an undead enemy. And it's also useful if you need to, recover your HP and you don't want to carry around a bunch of heal potions, because in this game you didn't even get to the item shops, but you can only buy items one at a time, and you can only use them one at a time. So if you want to heal yourself with a bunch of heal potions, you got to do it you got to buy them one at a time and use them one at a time.
Thank goodness we've evolved past this point.
Yes.
I promise I'll play this game sometime.
Oh, okay.
I promise.
I have beaten it, but it was a long experience.
One thing I should point out that we just did here is we walked into that room and we talked to the robot, and there's supposed to be a square that the robot was standing on. If we would have walked one step further into that room, we would have had this big fight. And we can just run from that fight, but it's still a pretty good time save just to be able to let the robot step on there and then be on our way and avoid this spiked tile that we would have to fight or run from even.
So you manipulated his position so you didn't have to deal with it.
Exactly. We made that robot walk to where we wanted him to. And that's like a 1 in a million, I mean, maybe not 1 in a million, but it's a pretty low probability for him to be there exactly when you enter the room. But I made it happen.
Nice.
Yeah. And the other thing, though, is that even if you could do that in a real-time run, you don't want to, because some of the best treasure in the game is right behind him.
Really?
Yeah, those treasure chests that were lined up there, it's all awesome stuff. One of them is a ribbon that protects you from every status ailment and reduces damage from every element. Pretty nice.
I like ribbons like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I would wear a ribbon if I had that kind of ribbon.
And the ribbon appears in every other Final Fantasy game too. So, yeah, that's they kept that. It's the most important piece of equipment.
Just one note on that: it's either an equipment or an effect. Sometimes you'll see it come across as an effect and not an equipable item, but yeah, it does show up. Repeat it in
some form, yeah.
I've ever seen.
So we got the slab in from the mermaids there, and then we went through the waterfall. So now we're going to take that slab and we're going to show it to Dr. Oon. Now I wish I could do this. When I was, I mentioned learning a new language. I wish I could learn a new language that easily. Just talk to Dr. We bring him the Rosetta Stone. You talk to him there, and all of a sudden you can speak this new language.
Very nice manipulation to get him to move towards you, too.
That's right, yeah, of course. We made him walk towards us. It would have been nice if we could get him to move a little bit further, but sometimes it's so hard to manipulate these things. And because we just had a really difficult NPC manipulation with that robot.
Someone's going to ask me when I get home after the event, what did you learn from this? I'm going to be like, a new language! But not really.
Yeah, the language of geekiness.
So we did all these things. We got the cube from the robot in the waterfall. This is another fight that we can't run from, but luckily we've got the flame sword. So they actually did connect. There's an elemental weakness type, and they actually did connect that. The problem is there's only a few weapons that actually have an elemental flag. So that's the flame sword, the ice sword, and Excalibur. Excalibur just has every element flag lit up, and there's no element. So the enemy's elemental strength doesn't manage, just weaknesses.
So that was programmed in at least.
Yeah.
Weakness, but not strength.
That's right. Yeah. So we kind of get lucky that we got the flame sword, and we get 2 enemies that are weak against it.
And doesn't Dark do absolutely nothing?
Yeah, that's right. So when you saw we were Dark on the Kraken there, that's another bug, that the Dark does nothing. There's a lot of spells where especially these effect magic spells that they didn't kind of wire up exactly what the effect was supposed to do. So one of them is Dark. There's a bunch of other effects too that didn't work.
It just didn't work.
Yep. Fortunately, though, if you watch the White Mage run, you know that they did make the fear spell work.
Yes.
A little quirky,
definitely a little quirky. If you have not seen the White Mage run from RPG Limit Break 2019, I won't spoil the ending, but I can say it is a very unusual way to finish the game.
Yeah. And you know who we had to thank for that? Biscuit, the founder of TAS Videos. He actually posted, like, long time ago, he said, like, hey, I just figured this out. If you like, cast this spell a few times, something weird happens. So
Just casually walking around with one party member with 3 hit points. I am absolutely terrified at this point.
Yeah, you have 3 hit points. Everyone else is dead. So you got one guy with 3 hit points hauling 3 corpses around behind you.
3? We've got 3 whole hit points. Come on.
I mean, I gotta be honest. If anyone else walked in with that kind of rage, I would give up in fear too.
Yeah, the enemies here are pretty dangerous. And normally, so the encounter rate here, or at least, so the rate that, you notice that every time we start a fight, we pick run, and we get to run right away. That is not going to happen normally. The RNG, especially with no manipulation, when you pick run, there's a, so every turn in battle, one of the things it does is it picks the order of everyone. So it takes, there's up to 9 enemies in every fight. So if you have the small enemies and there's 9 of them, it keeps track of 9 slots. And then you've got 4 party members. So it puts 14 in all 13 of those in a row. And then what it does is it randomly picks 2 and swaps them. Yeah. And it does that, I forget how many times it does it, but it's not enough. And also, swapping that way isn't like a kind of a sure luck manipulation or like a kind of a completely random ordering. So, as a result, your party members are more likely to go last in battle compared to the enemy. The enemy's more likely to go before you just because of how the RNG is set up.
You just took on a blue dragon with 3 hit points?
Yeah.
You're insane.
And in fact, this is actually pretty crazy because that blue dragon has a very high chance to hit you. It also has a thunder spell. If it used that, we would just die instantly. But
with 3 hit points, I can understand.
Yeah. But it's weak at fire, and we've got a flame sword.
That is fair. Now, you say you run right away, but in many cases I see pausing up to 2 seconds in order to manipulate luck. Oh,
Exactly,
you got the Bane Sword.
So this is going to be our weapon from now on. The Bane Sword. The Bane Sword has the effect of a spell called Bane. And what Bane does is an effect called Poison Smoke Terminated, which is an instant death attack. And it's a poison flag that most enemies near the end of the game are all immune to it, including a lot of the ones that we have to fight. But there is a glitch that's almost certainly a programming oversight. So when an enemy is immune to a condition, that so backing up, when you do a status attack, any sort of status effect, there's this roll. You roll an RNG, and there's a certain threshold that gets computed based on whether there's sort of like a magic defense stat for each enemy. And based on that this threshold gets computed, and if your roll is less than the threshold for the enemy, then it works. So that's in this case, the instant death attack would work. Now, if the enemy is immune to that status attack, what it actually does is it just sets that threshold to 0. Now, you'd think if it's less than 0, that's not going to happen, right? If your roll is less than 0, it can't work. But the problem is, the oversight here, is that the comparison is less than or equal to.
Oh.
So if you roll exactly 0 in your threshold, you can break the enemy's immunity and make it work anyway.
Huh.
Now, we don't have to do that on this fight. This is actually only about a 1 in 7 chance, because Tiamat is actually weak to poison. So this is actually even viable in an RTA run. Not, if there's no luck manipulation here, it's a little iffy. but it's definitely worth it to kind of like get a good time through here.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're gonna use this on every boss from now on and just instantly kill them with this Bane sword.
Nice. We're slamming through this game. It took me a lot longer to beat this when I played it.
What are our timers at?
Looks like about a minute and 2 seconds. Sorry, an hour and 2 minutes.
An hour and 2 minutes. Okay.
A minute and 2 seconds.
I know
that's-
time.
Yeah.
Do we have time for a few words before the end of the run?
That's great. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. Well, remember, you are watching Quest of Glory, Hope and Healing 2, benefiting Nami. We have received a $25 donation from Little Fox saying, "Yo, Snow, it's your GM." So thank you very much for that. And we have received $20 from Mr. Bear from Proudmoore, who says, "Nami is a wonderful program. Acceptance of mental illness is a must so those that suffer can be helped and better understood. We never know what others have been through. It doesn't cost anything to be kind." Where are you, Snow? Great to donate. Well, thank you so much indeed. And
Oh, yeah.
I can't help but echo what that donation says there. It doesn't cost anything to be kind. It's that resonates with me. So thank you so much indeed. Very quickly before we hand it back, we do have some Bid Wars incentives coming up. Very quickly, the next run after the TAS, the Final Fantasy X TAS, thank you again for your generous donations on that, is going to be Monster Hunter World. And we do have a few incentives for that will need to be cut off towards the beginning of the run. We've got Name the Hunter. Currently, Mount Dumptyton is ahead by $1 on that one. We've got Choosing the Main Weapon, the Switch Axe. And we have Name the Palico, currently Dump Truck. So if you'd like to get your donations into those, please remember all your donations go towards Nami. Thank you very much indeed. And back to the TASBot.
Thank you. Oh, and by the way, TASBot's runner choice is to name the epoch TASBot in Chrono Trigger.
Yes. So I heard your DM call you out.
Yeah, if you're confused, Snow is my nickname in World of Warcraft. So these are all my WoW friends jumping in and donating for a really great cause. So I had the nickname before Final Fantasy 13, and I make no correlations between myself and that character. But yeah, just shout out to WoW friends. You guys are absolutely awesome.
So we were wandering around with 3 hit points. Now we're wandering around with 1 hit point, wading through lava on a regular basis.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Well, the thing is, when you're walking on lava, there's no encounters. So we didn't kind of like take as much lava as we could, and this is another step at kind of like grooming that encounter system to where we want it to be for the final dungeon, which is coming up in just a little bit here. That final dungeon has, again, a lot of these unrunnable encounters, and the volcano does not. So we can kind of like groom that and take some extra steps there so that when we go into the final dungeon, now we're in a good state. We can just walk right through and run from all the fights, or not, or at least get some fights that aren't so bad.
And are we ending the game on 1 hit point?
Yeah, we're not going to heal at this point. Come on.
Did we ever use that cabin?
I think we used it earlier. Maybe when we... it might have been like when we used the floater stone to get the airship.
Ah.
We needed some extra hit points. We needed to tank some damage from those zombols on the way to Leafin.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So yeah,
On our way to the other town that I don't know what it's called. That one.
Yeah. This is the that was where we needed to use. So I guess we didn't see it, but where we got the chime, that town is they speak a different language because they're descended from the Sky people.
Mm.
And if we hadn't done the learning the new language, then we wouldn't be able to talk to them. They just say Lu Pa. So here's our Bane sword at work again. That Phantom has something like 600 HP.
Had.
Yeah, and all sorts of other nasty attacks. But yeah, luckily the lava takes you down to 1 HP but can't kill you. So if you don't mind being at 1 HP, it's pretty convenient.
I mean, I minded, but...
I would mind.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of the
Yeah,
1 hit point run.
if you're gonna actually have a fight and you're not manipulating your luck afterwards, then yeah, it's a little scarier. So this is another fight we can't run from, but again, poison smoke terminated. And here's our level 14. I think we make it one more level this run. So in the final dungeon here, you have to go through and you have to defeat all 4 fiends again, except they're even stronger. Mm-hmm. They have more. They have like some extra, more powerful attacks. They have more HP, more like basically they've been buffed, but you've still got to beat them, and they're right in your way. Mm-hmm. And at this point, the encounter rate starts to inch up a little bit. And the enemies are getting harder. And there's, remember when we fought Lich before in Earth Cave? It's not an easy fight, but, not so bad. So if you're not manipulating luck, the first thing he usually does is he casts Ice 2, which is a very powerful hit everyone spell. And we just manipulated that away. Sort of a lower probability, but we can do it. This one, we're going to do the same. Well, we're going to go first.
So I noticed you go into this menu to select Bane.
Yeah.
Is that because we haven't earlier selected Bane outside the menu? I'm a little bit curious what, because everywhere else you were able to just select an item and continue to use that weapon.
Yeah. So the Bane sword, we're using it as an item in battle rather than equipping it.
Yeah. So you're not actually swinging it.
Exactly. So anyone can equip the Bane sword. In fact, we used it in the White Mages run. In fact, I don't think the fighter can equip it. So there's a class change promotion in this game, and I don't think that the fighter can equip the Bane sword unless you get the class change. It's not a great weapon to equip anyway. But anyone can. So all of these pieces of equipment that are usable, anyone can use them.
So we're using it for its effect, but not using it as an actual weapon.
That's right.
Got it.
There is equipment that gives you the effect of like attack magic that does decent damage on all the enemies. There's equipment that gives you the effect of healing your whole party, which is another reason why Spellcat, the White Mage and Black Mage are just harder to use in casual play, because you can just get these items by the end of the game, and you've effectively anyone can use magic just by going to their item menu.
I feel like it's like we're holding up the sword and they're just in awe of the sword's power and then just die.
Keel over.
That's pretty much how it works, Poison smoke terminated.
Yeah.
Well, before we run out of run to talk over, I again want to say thank you so much for how much work you've put into this personally. About how many hours do you think you've spent making this tool-assisted speedrun?
Like this particular run, not that much, because I already had kind of all of the framework to do it. But I've probably spent, a few hundred hours on like just doing different Final Fantasy runs. I've done this run, I did the White Mage run, I've done the runs on task videos that use resets. And every time we tweak it a little bit, I've kind of got to go back and think like, what else can I do? I go back to my optimization scripts, and I find other little things like, if I hit the B button here instead of A to dismiss this dialogue, and then hit up and A at the same time, I can tweak out one more frame. Because even when the run is like over an hour long, we're still aiming for every frame in task videos. That's what tasking is all about.
It's true. Every frame is precious. So many jokes there. Anyway, this is a special type of... Ooh, this is a long wait.
Yeah, because there's only one place in the RNG that we can get this to happen. So there's actually a 3 out of 256 chance for Bane to work. But if we have to go first, and when we're going up against these bosses, we got to go first, because if we don't, they're going to go first and they're going to slaughter us. And we only got 1 HP. But anyway, if we go first, if we need to go first in battle and get Bane to work, we got 1 in 256 chance.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh. So, and we're gonna have to do that, over every. We've had to do that like on every fight. Here is the final boss, and poison smoke terminated.
That's it. That's all.
That's it.
Was that time?
That's time.
Wow, that's time. Alrighty.
Nice.
Man, that was a whirlwind tour. If you would like to see more tool-assisted speedruns, come on over to TASVideos.org. I am the senior ambassador for TASVideos.org. Frank, I'm sorry.
TheAxeman.
TheAxeman. TheAxeman is also on the ambassador team. Thomas is just here to witness the crazy, but hold on to your hats. He's coming back next to show you Final Fantasy X. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Again, if you have any questions about what TASBot is, head on over to discord.tas.bot, and we have some other news for you we'll share after the Final Fantasy X run of other things we're doing ourselves for Nami. So be sure to stick around for the next run. Signing off for the Final Fantasy TASBot run. We'll see you on the other side.
Thank you so much indeed, Dwango and Axeman, Coda Wilson. Absolutely amazing tasks there. Final Fantasy. Very quickly, before we go to the quick intermission, we've got some donations for you. We have a $50 donation again from a Ratburger, who says, Coda Wilson is a Shadow Priest legend. And I must point out, as a WoW player myself, amazing to see the support from your guild there, Coda Wilson. It's
Thank
so
you.
amazing when that
That's
happens.
awesome.
It's absolutely
Thank you.
fantastic. $25 from Jamblar without a comment. Thank you for your donation. $15 again from Heel Turtle. And $15 anonymous donation without any comments. But thank you so much to your amazing donations for Nami. 27,278 raised so far. We'll be back very shortly with the Final Fantasy X bonus tasks that your very generous donations have unlocked. Stay with us.